what happens.
And then it's fine.
And he knows.
And he knows, he doesn't,
He's watching us.
okay. So
Good
that's
deal.
good. So,
Before we begin, if too many, please don't lean close. If too many of these are on at one time, there may be some problems, so just, you know,
The voice is supposed to be coming out from the
it will,
ceiling.
it will come down on
That's
us.
where
You will
they're
hear
recording.
yourself.
oh, so they aren't really using this a whole lot, or,
They
No,
are.
okay.
I can hear you, like from above.
Oh,
Like
sound.
when you speak in a bit.
turn yours on so I can hear this.
So if you want to do roll call, so the voice is from there. Are we good?
Okay. Okay.
Bend it down to you. There you go.
And then that'll be
There you
better?
go.
Okay, all right. So now we know. So I should lean forward a little, maybe.
Or move the mic closer to you.
Okay, so, great. So let's go ahead and start the meeting. And Evelyn, will you please take roll?
Chin, Hagan, Lloyd,
Here.
McDougal,
Here.
Moss.
Here.
And is there anybody who, from the public, who would like to address the group? So we let him do it now, or we put him on the agenda? This is not, it's Nigel, right?
Correct.
Right.
Nice to have you.
Thank you.
Well, first we need, when is public comment?
Right, that's it.
Oral communications, perfect. Sorry, yes, so he would speak now.
Okay,
Yes. Shall I fill this in and hand right back?
you can,
No.
yes, you can fill it in for
Fill it in
Evelyn, but
after.
go ahead and talk. Do we need to do anything special for the mic?
No? Yeah, the microphone over there.
Okay.
This is all new for us.
We're just trying to make it complicated for you, Nigel.
I'm going to hang in there with it. Well, good evening. I was surprised at the huge traffic jam downstairs in the garage with a lot of frayed tempers, so I'm sorry to be cutting it kind of fine. There's something I'd like to just hand out for you in case you don't have it. I'll give you some, and I'll give you some. We publish a forward twice a year. This is not working? Oh, I can't tell. Okay, is that better? So we publish a forward twice a year. This is the most recent version. It goes out to our members. We have about 800 people receiving this, and then we also send it out to other people on our list of people we want to contact. And I'll be making sure that all of you get a copy of this in the future. So main thing I wanted to talk to you about is Cubbly, but I remember from previous meetings you had an interest in our finances and so on, so I thought I would just give you a brief one sentence on that, which is that our first quarter numbers show that we're entirely on track for our financial year budget. So you can interpret that any number of ways, but it's a good number in itself. So the main reason I'm here this evening is that you probably realize that Cubbly put out an RFP for the rooms that will be coming available at Cubbly with Foothill moving out. And so we bid on that. I think there were 39 bidders, 37 or 39 bidders. And we went to the walk around with Donna Hartman. And basically what she told us is, she gave us an idea of where Avenidas would go, so no reason for us to bid on that. But anyway, we wouldn't have bid on those kinds of spaces. And we said that there were a lot of different rooms that could suit our purpose. And so what she recommended was that we bid individually at the line item level, should we say, on each room. So we bid on 19 rooms. And fair to say, I think, that we felt very optimistic that bidding on 19 rooms, that this would work out for us. And as you know, it did not. We were not, they selected, I think, 17 out of 39, and we were not on the 17. So the board was a bit frustrated, but I think you can fill in the blanks without me editorializing. But our volunteers were also pretty upset about it. After all, they do this tremendous amount of work. We calculate we got 160 volunteers, 16,000 hours that they put in, and it just seemed like, well, really, the city couldn't find one room in 19 for us to work with. So there's definitely a little bit of unhappiness with the volunteer community. So what's happened unexpectedly is within the last couple of days, we were contacted by the real estate folks to tell us that there was other space that had come up at Cubberley that was available. And so this was unexpected because basically they had said what was available and we had bid on it. So it wasn't quite clear there were other things inside the bid which were not obvious, or whether other rooms have become available. And they're giving us the first choice. Basically they said that if there were 17 bidders, we were 18. So we were one cut off. We actually have no idea how it was weighted, or how that was sort of what the procedure behind that was. So we're currently talking to a gentleman by the name of Hamid, who's the manager of real estate for the city, and he's been extremely helpful, very, very positive, and is helping us look at one or two spaces that are available to us. One of them is a locker room and shower, which is not necessarily the most obvious use for us, as we don't need lockers, and maybe we do need a shower, but it's not a very useful space, and we can't take anything out, so we have to live with it. So that doesn't really suit our purpose very well. And the other is some very small offices attached to that, and we would try and make do with the offices. Now, the reason we want this space is because we have a considerable problem with our book pipeline. So if you fathom that we get maybe 30 to 40,000 books a month, which is our best estimate, and we have on sale for the sale about 70,000. At any given time, we have thousands of books in storage. So right now, actually, our storage is a little on the low side, but we have maybe 600 or 700 boxes of books, and we calculate 25 to 30 books per box. So it'll give you an idea of what's behind, and none of that is indoors. Our indoors are completely packed. So this material are basically under tarps in a courtyard outside what's known at Cubberley as H2H3. H2H3 is our bargain room. And so there's an overhang, there's tarps. Now, they're theoretically safe from the elements to some degree, but nevertheless, being out in those elements, and we're talking about paper products, it's not the way to go. So we have used off-site space, which is expensive, and I tried to get rid of all of that at the beginning of the year because, again, it's expensive, and it's actually quite logistically difficult for us to handle. So what we're looking for really is storage space within the Cubberley campus. And we could really use any space that was available. So my previous concern was that we were unsuccessful, which was disappointing. However, I have to say they've come back and they are trying to work with us, although it's not clear there's anything they're going to be able to offer us, or what it might be, or where it might be. So that's a remaining issue. Now, I'm not actually here to ask you to specifically do anything, as to make you aware of where we are with all of this, in case we can leverage yourselves to help us go forward with this. So the one aspect is actually finding a space on the Cubberley campus. The other is what we would pay for it. The budget this year for rent is $76,000. It's one of our two highest costs, that plus labor. So the $76,000 you can look at as being directly pulled out of any money via grants that we can provide to the library for its programs. The money goes in two sources because, as you know, Cubberley is divided between two entities. But roughly speaking, they're about $25,000 each. Not exactly, but we have three locations. It's kind of an easy way to think about it. So for us, we're trying to figure out how to cut costs and how to manage costs. So we really can't afford to increase our costs, because anything that we do now is directly taken away from the amazing Palo Alto library system. So what we want is we want the space and we want it for free. Right? Now, you could say that's a great negotiating position to start with. We're not paying a great deal. You know, the rates that we're paying are about 80 cents a square foot, which is extremely cheap. We couldn't possibly match this in a commercial market, right? Which is why the long-term aspect of Cubberley is such a problem for us, because if we were pushed out of Cubberley, how could we if you look at the commercial real estate, how would we survive? But sticking with the sort of present tense situation, we did bid on the 19 rooms requesting that there would be no fee for this. And it is built into the RFP that there can be a monetary offer and a non-monetary offer. And the non-monetary offer is based upon value to the community, shall we say. And I don't recall the Avenidas bid, but I think they bid at something, $1 and something, and they were given a reduction. Now, the RFP process has not been completed in a way that I would expect, and it's probably just a timing issue. Although they've announced who have been successful, they haven't announced any of the information on the bids. So I don't know, for instance, if everybody is paying rent, or what they're paying, or if anybody is being given an allowance. So I don't know the answer to that. If we can come up with zero as a cost for this, that's a great thing. We take anything. We take a broom closet. But if we have to pay, then it becomes an issue of how much we really, really believe we can afford. So what I'm throwing out is that for the benefit of the library and FOPAL's operations, we need to drive this number down as low as humanly possible. And they did have an element in the RFP that would allow this. If the number becomes too high, we simply can't afford it because we wouldn't be able to justify the increasing cost. And basically, every dollar it goes up is another book that we have to sell. And our revenue streams the good news on our revenue streams is that they're constant, because the concern over time is our revenue streams would start to fade away for all of the obvious reasons about reading books, selling books, and so on. But actually, as I said earlier, our revenue on the first quarter will take us to our budget. So it's not a big issue, it's just an issue. But we can't easily come up with a way of selling more books or generating more revenue. In any specific, I'd be happy to have a conversation around this. This is a board conversation endlessly and a sort of water cooler conversation endlessly at FOPAL. But in a way, the answer isn't if I pay $5,000 more, I go sell $5,000 worth of books. Be hard-pressed to find anybody at FOPAL that thinks that's likely. So we need the space basically to take everything indoors. And at sometimes we have literally thousands of boxes, really an enormous number of boxes outside. Right now it's a little low, it's probably 600 or 800, I would guess. But again, they're in the elements and we need to bring them inside if we can. So one, I'm hoping that we can come up with a space. I don't know that that's really going to happen. Two is the cost of the space. And certainly I'm going to start by asking that the cost is set at zero because of our contribution and because basically this money funds into the library. I think a counter-argument is going to be that every penny that we drive towards the library we're taking away from the school district. There's some element in this story that came up. It was kind of an odd point, but nevertheless, it was one of the things that was explained to me.
You mean every penny out of the city budget?
Sorry, go ahead.
That the money from the city budget would be taking away from the schools if it was given to you. Is that what you're saying they said?
Let me just say again to make sure if their agenda is obviously to pull in as much revenue as possible, that they've lost their foothill, right? So basically, if I give them $1, that dollar goes to them. But then I can argue, well, I'm taking $1 away from the library. So it's a kind of which bucket do you want to use? And my point to them was, well, my charter is to help the library. I love the school system, but that's not actually my role in life. My role in life is to make the libraries work. So I don't know what they might come back with if we say zero. Obviously, they could say no. Or obviously, they could come back with various numbers and we could try and work with it. But I just basically wanted to make you aware of where this stands. And again, whatever they come back with, I'm not necessarily expecting that you can have an effect on that number. If you could, it would be wonderful. I don't know if that's really possible. But I did want to let you know where all of this stands with FOPAL at the moment. And that's basically what I wanted to get across to you.
Let me make a suggestion. I don't know if it'll fly or not, but you probably know that for decades the city gave the school district millions of dollars a year not to sell school sites, long after they knew that they weren't going to be selling any school sites.
Yes, indeed.
And they finally stopped doing it. They just said, well, we'll give you money. We're not going to play this game.
Right.
But I believe it's something like $3 million, $3.5 million a year. So the city has some leverage with the school district, and they have a monthly city school liaison committee meeting.
Mm-hmm.
It might be possible to get somebody in the city administration to talk to the school district and say, gee, this is a very valuable nonprofit organization. It's done a lot of good work for us.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the money that they donate to the city, which they use to buy books, those books are also used by students.
Right.
So this would be a cooperative arrangement if you could minimize the rent that Fopals has to pay.
Mm.
But we'd have to get somebody on the city staff, hopefully somebody like Jim Keene, to be willing to take the lead and do this. Well, maybe Monique can talk to somebody about it, but
Right.
that's a possibility. I don't know if it'll happen, I don't know if it'll work, but it's a
No,
suggestion.
It's a good suggestion. And I met with Ed the other day, the deputy, I believe, is city manager, I think is his title, and was able to give him just a real brief rundown. He came to our volunteer meeting, which Monique and her staff organized. So I was able to give him a little bit of an insight into this, and I sent him an email which explained it in some more detail, and he certainly was interested in hearing what's going on at Fopal and was keen to see if he could figure out to help us forward on this. So I can certainly go back to Ed and ask him specifically on that topic, or again, elevate it up to Jim. I don't know Jim, I'm just mentioning Ed because he would know who I am, and I've talked to him.
So, so Nigel, I just wanted to say thank you for coming.
Oh, you're welcome.
We do understand the value of the contribution that that football makes, and we did put it on the agenda for our study session with the city council. So we did make that point to them.
And thank you for doing that, by the way.
Last month. There was not a lot of discussion about it. I think people are aware. I think the issue is more, as you're stating, and that's what I hear from you, that you're in competition with a lot of other resources that all need money, and you're hoping that Fopal gets consideration for its contribution.
Yes.
So certainly we would like to do as much as we can for that. It sounds like Don has some suggestions, and then I have some, and we can,
Okay.
yeah, good.
Thank you. I don't really have any suggestions, I just have questions.
Oh,
So you mentioned a person named Hanib or whatever, and that would be
Hamid,
the
Hamid.
Hamid.
Yes.
Okay.
He has a complicated last name, and I don't want to
And-
mangle it.
He's the real estate person for the school district, right?
The city.
For the city?
Right. So he manages, in my discussion, he handles all real estate for the city. I may not have his title correct, but he did say to me, I believe, he's the manager of real estate. So he handles the real estate as it pertains to Cubberley and outside of Cubberley that's within the city's purview.
So I guess I'm confused. Basically, Cubberley, most of Cubberley is a school district property.
Right.
But the bidding went through the city, is that
Correct.
right?
Correct.
But the other thing I think you're saying, and my words, not yours, it was not a particularly transparent and still is not a transparent process in terms of what the decision factors were. And I guess we know who won the bids, but we don't know
Right.
what they paid.
The list
or-
of, yes, so to try and cover your points, I don't know who was involved in making the decision, and I have asked, and I could maybe pursue it more, but I don't know who was involved in the decision. I also don't know what the weighting process was. I had spoken to the people that we worked with, which is Donna Hartman specifically, and she had no information on that for me. So I don't have an answer for that. But as you say, it's city business. It should be there.
It should be very transparent if it's
But-
city business.
I think, as you know, is when RFPs are usually, the process is over and awards are given, then again, the awards are open for anyone to review. But on the RFP website, they haven't reached that point. There's only a drop-down menu showing who the successful bidders were.
You also mentioned a few numbers. You talked about 25 to 30 books per box, and then you talked about how many boxes there were. Can you repeat that?
Obviously, it depends on what kind of books we're talking about. But as a rule
Right.
of thumb, we tend to operate about 20 books to a box, is what I
Right.
meant to say. And right now, I would guess we have about 800 boxes outside of our facility. And that, if you came right now, what we would show you, that's sort of low for us. Probably 2 or 3 months ago, we may have had 3 times that many sitting outside. So all around the year, we want them protected for obvious reasons. This is books is how we generate revenue. But in terms of the winter coming in, it's even more problematic for us.
I totally agree. I guess the only other thing I want to say, I have thoughts, but probably not to discuss here, is I think that we should apologize for not being at the dinner. It wasn't
that's
lack
fine.
of interest. We were all out of town.
That's absolutely fine. I was a half an hour late myself. So, so doctor's
thank you.
appointments and things just crop up. Life gets in the way, right? So
Yeah,
that's fine.
that happens.
Is there anything else?
Yeah,
Okay.
I have a few questions. So it sounds like what you're saying is there's about $16,000 possibly revenue, or money that could be available to the library that's under TARPs that could be ruined.
Yes.
That's what you're saying.
That's one way of putting it, yes.
Yes. So, so I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. My understanding is you bid on these additional rooms at Cubberley, which would have been used for storage, but the space at Cubberley that you have been using for the last several years is dedicated to you right now. So you still have that space. Is
Yes,
that correct? And is
that's
that in jeopardy at all?
That's
as
in
far
no-
as you know?
That's not in any short-term jeopardy. It's only in jeopardy in the long term of Cubberley's future. So we
Yeah.
have 3 locations, 2 modules, and a set of
Right.
rooms within the
Right.
old classroom structure.
And so, and I also am thinking that moving of books is something you accomplish with volunteers. So
Yes.
moving of books is not, having to move them around is not an expense that offsets the cost of having them. You're
Right.
not pouring
There's no expense. There's no expense.
money
in-
away by having to move
Right.
them from one room to another.
No, there's
or
no
from
expense.
Or you could move them to Cubberley. So I do have one suggestion that I don't know if you've thought of. But I know that corporate real estate is often in a situation in various companies where they have empty warehouse, they have empty buildings, they have empty warehouse space. And they do a lot of different things from a financial point of view to try to deal with that, including, they'll keep it all closed and off so they can make it a loss and keep people packed in buildings even though another building is empty and things like that. But a donation might be something that could be, of space.
Yes.
Might be something that one of the many corporations around here might be happy to do.
Right.
How you ask for that, I don't know. I don't think I can be of help in that, but,
Right.
It is an idea
Right.
that would be, if, the way I'm thinking of it, it would be free.
Yes. I personally
And
haven't.
you would have
tri-
to move it around, but,
Yes, and the logistics of it can be quite an issue, particularly if it's off-site. But you're right, and you're also right, it doesn't cost us anything. We're using volunteer labor to do all of this. On the Cubberley site, we use basically a fancy a very old dilapidated golf cart.
yeah.
And outside of Cubberley, we've got volunteers with pickup trucks and so on. I haven't actually pursued what you are suggesting, and the reason is that it was tried previously, which
I
doesn't
see.
mean we shouldn't try again. And nobody could find any way of doing it. And companies that had considerable available space in Palo Alto, for instance, wouldn't even consider a conversation with us about it. There's a lady on our board that Monique would know, Nancy Cohen, who was very good at this kind of thing, very assertive lady that can really sort of make things happen. And she drew a complete blank. So again, I wouldn't say we couldn't go back and try it again. I think it's certainly worth looking at, but I know when we've discussed it at the board level, they haven't been that excited about it because they couldn't even get a conversation previously.
And so you regularly, so at a particular book sale, you're going to move how many books usually?
At the sale,
Mm-hmm.
there's about 70,000 on offer, and we probably sell, well, say at least a half of them.
Okay. So that pile would get used.
Oh, yeah.
And
It
in the next
rotates.
sale, or it'd be,
Right,
so
right.
actually having it available to Cubberley is
Right.
important.
We
Okay,
actually
that's
give
just
book-
good to know.
We actually we give books away.
I know
Not
that too.
only to free nights for the community, we also bring in another entity that takes books away for nothing so
Mm-hmm.
that we can repopulate our shelves. But that sort of velocity of turnover is not usually enough to absorb
Okay,
the
so
backlog.
I only have one other question. Do we know, it sounds as though you're working with the real estate
Mhm.
people, and it sounds as though you are working with the school board that owns, who owns Cumberly? The school board, the school,
I'm not in touch with anybody at
Yeah.
the school board, just to be clear,
yeah.
only at the city.
Well, I'm trying to think who the school board representative is. I think the city, there were two city council members at the last meeting, Tom Du Bois and I think Greg Schmidt were the two, I believe. Sharp? Oh, Greg Sharp, yeah.
And they're the liaisons between the city and the school district, is
And
that what you're saying?
Yeah, and the school,
Okay.
they're the ones that meet monthly with the school board people.
Okay,
Yeah, okay, so we'll keep you on our radar.
okay,
And, we're behind your cause.
okay.
We think it's important. Thank you very much for coming.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Yeah. Anybody else have anything else to say? We're done? Yeah, okay. Okay, so we need to look at our agenda quick, and we're supposed to be approving the minutes that were provided in our packet from last month. Do either...
Actually, the first
Oh.
thing is, did you have
Okay.
any changes, requests, or deletions?
Oh, to the agenda?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I read that, but I didn't get it. Okay, does anybody have any changes or requests or deletions for the agenda? Mr. McDougall? Mr. Moss? All right. Okay, and then the next item is approval of draft minutes for the regular meeting on August 25th. So I need a motion and a second or comments. So there was a motion from Bob, second from Don. Approval. Oh, do we have to vote? We have to vote. Aye. Okay. So then we want to welcome Mary, who's from Project Safety Net, and she's going to give us a presentation. Thank you very much for coming, Mary.
Thank you, Chairwoman Loy, for having me and the rest of the commissioners. I did do some side follow-ups. So the two school board liaisons to the city and school committee is Board Member Terry Godfrey and Board Member Melissa Caswell. So I had actually presented similarly a report to that committee last month. So I tend to like to keep the presentation informal, so feel free to interrupt me with questions. Otherwise, I want to respect the culture of this commission. If you want me to just do a more formal presentation and save all your questions at the end, I will defer to you. How would you like it?
I'm good with informal.
We're really formal.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, good. All right, then. I also want to acknowledge Gayatri and Jenny, as well as Evelyn, for helping me prepare sort of behind the scenes. So Commissioner McDougall knows this about me already. I always like to start off a meeting with a quote that really kind of is apropos. So this quote is actually focused on courage. So courage does not always roar. Sometimes courage is the quiet voice at the end of the day saying, I will try again tomorrow. And so how this resonates, especially in our work in Project Safety Net, as well as, even though Library Advisory Commission, some people out there may not think it's important, but it's critical, which, is a contributing knowledge. And sometimes being that superhero, people think you have to be visible, invincible, and fierce. But this tells me, courage also equates with, hope, tenacity, and patience. Some other characteristic traits of courage, and then really valuing the journey and not just the outcome. So for us at Project Safety Net, why courage is an important theme this month, is some of you may or might not know, it's October is anti-bullying prevention, so really how you bring that courage out with the young people, as well as sort of not being a bystander but a protector, as well as this month, and I'll share as well, the American Foundation Suicide Prevention had their South Bay Out of the Darkness walk, walk in South Bay. And what that walk does, it brings a community of individuals not to only promote suicide prevention awareness, but it's really to also remember the loved ones we've lost, but also support the survivors, and really just kind of bringing awareness about how we are all coming together in regards to our struggle, mental well-being, and so forth. For those who are not too familiar with, let me see how this, there we go. So this is our mission, our active mission, our website, to develop and implement an effective, comprehensive, community-based mental health plan for overall youth well-being in Palo Alto. Just to help me understand, I know, and you probably know more of the history, so the Project Safety Net first came together as a task force in response to the first cluster of suicides in 2009. So I don't know maybe how long you've been in the community, maybe been involved as either, a parent, a neighbor, a community leader. So since then, it has evolved and continued to get commitment from the community to transform the task force into a collaborative and really look at how can Project Safety Net just be not simply react to crisis, but really look at the upstream as it points out in the mission about the youth well-being. So some more about our structure. Our current leadership team is comprised of 11 members, including myself, and these are health services that provide direct services to our young people, grief support, but as well as mental health providers, educators, representatives from the city, and we also have a parent advocate and survivor.
So, how was 11 people decided?
So,
If we had a really good idea for a 12th person.
yeah, so what actually one of the charges, and we're kind of jumping ahead, and you saw a little bit, is throughout the evolution of Project Safety Net, the executive leadership chair, I think, was more of a convenience. Who were the key community partners that were really in the mix of dealing with youth well-being? So, of course, the two biggest partners are the City of Palo Alto, being that their charge is to support the residents, and then the Palo Alto Unified School District. In regards to the other partners, how that were divided, I think from the previous leadership and historically, it's again, I think it was more like who was already doing work in the community. Sort of kind of previewing, one of my charges is to, when I was hired by the collaborative, was to look at our infrastructure. Really, we don't have a formal charter. The collaborative has gone through a lot of really good, meaningful planning work, have had MOUs and sort of like blueprints, but having a charter or a bylaws, as you know, is really critical through governance, and especially when you're dealing with multiple. So one of our work groups is working on that, and really how do we honor the history of how executive leadership would develop, but making it more inclusive, and how the rotation of governance and so forth. So for this, I think it's more convenience and who was able to serve. So in regards to the work groups, because this is a transitional year for Project Safety Net, and one of my goals as executive director is really how to start shifting the culture of the work, of how we work as a collaborative, and really model engagement, not only coming from the community partners who are already doing a lot of the work, but also those who are in leadership roles to kind of get more involved, and not simply just be an advisory, but really a working action group. And that's some of the feedback the community has been very vocal, really appreciate a lot of thoughtfulness, and yes, we've had some really constructive activities, but how do we keep that momentum going, and what is our impact in the long term?
Excuse me, I am having a question about the slide that we're looking at.
Yes.
So I see, so the middle one is just who's the chair, but there are two people?
Yeah, so
Oh, there's a chair and a staff liaison, but then there are additional members in the members
Yes.
Okay,
So-
that
so
answers my question.
So thank you for previewing. So that's pretty much the organization. And some of these working groups are really not I think that's part of our infrastructure, organizational development activities, look at what should be our standing, subcommittees. But for now, really, it's like, we still want to emulate action. So I will tell you, that there are about, between these two slides, which you have, we have 6 work groups, and the most active are communications, the EPI-8 community survey, and the infrastructure. Some activity with the youth voice, and then really in the formative, we've just maybe convened what is our purpose, and is this something that we want to do long-term. And a lot of the work in the communications work group has been really, of course, responding and reacting in a timely manner with issues that might relate to youth well-being or suicide prevention. But more importantly, it's been linked a lot to the EPI-8 community investigation that you are well aware of, about how, even though it's a countywide activity, and even though City Palo Alto community leaders and members were the advocate for it, how we want to communicate the dissemination of information and how to engage the community is probably very different what the county want. So that work group works very closely on that. The second one is also, and it's kind of linked to youth voice, we wanted to engage the youth more in our work, not to think of them as an us and they, but me as a community health educator, I've always learned one of the primary principles is start with the community. And if your work is about youth well-being, then your priority community is the youth, the young people. And so how to engage them is they are part of the process, not just a stamp. And so, again, sort of also being mindful of their capacity, we have piloted and hopefully will sustain bringing in some young people from Palo and Gun to actually look at more of some strategic activities. The 3 activities they're working on is developing a curriculum that they can use to educate other journalists, from a student level journalists. The second one is we have certain campaigns that are focusing on Mental Health Matters Month, or like we have October Anti-Bullying, or previously September was suicide prevention, how to have them provide their insight about what's a really good way to use social media or other ways to promote that get more activity and engagement, not only from our general Palo Alto community, but from the young people. And then the third one is just governance and leadership, because we say that many of these students who are getting involved may one day, if their aspiration is to continue in journalism, be editors or, chief editors. So you have to deal with managing. And so they're actually helping with defining what is the role that's meaningful for young people if they're going to serve on this communications meeting, and how do we do that transition in that pipeline. So, and then, let's see, and then the EPI-8 community survey, one of the challenges that the EPI-8 is that they couldn't really engage minors. And also when they were doing their field visit, we had over 10 days, I think, about 150 different stakeholders. But then what's missing is how do the general community respond? And so with the commitment from the leadership and from youth feedback and everything, so we administered a survey, which was data was forwarded to the Centers for Disease Control and SAMHSA, so they can incorporate in the final report. And what we're doing, which we're still in the process of analyzing, is that even though in the final report, CDC may just select certain findings that they want to report on as it integrates to the bigger picture, we thought we have a bigger commitment to report broader. That's much more tailored. So a lot of that work is still in the process, and it started in July, and so I know that there probably is some urgency from the committee here, but we're trying to make sure there's alignment, and we're working in a lot partnership with CDC. And then finally, infrastructure, as I was telling you, so really looking at developing our chart and so forth. The message we've been sharing is that we're not reinventing the wheel. We're not trying to start any new process. It's really doing like a meta-analysis for those who've done research, or just synthesizing all the work and what is the, moving forward, looking at all three works of planning activity, what is the best structure for Project Safety Net so we can engage the current partners, but also newer partners. And as well as right now, the chair position is permanently held by the city of Palo Alto and the school district, which I understand is the two largest, but me coming from doing a lot of collaborative work and coming with vulnerable communities, I know that should be a rotation for really like parity, and so that's a lot of some of the hard discussions we're talking and so forth. And then I think the means restriction is really more of, I see it's a policy advisory group. Right now, it's spearheaded by Dr. Shashank Joshi and other individuals, and their charge is to kind of look at best practices. Of course, immediately their priority is looking at railways, death by railway, so sort of like how to minimize the means. So it's lethal means to harm. So in suicide prevention, you don't just look at upstream, you really have to do the whole continuum. And so, but they are full well understanding that, we have had deaths in our community beyond, not just on the railway, especially the private ones, whether it's suffocation or overdose. So fortunately, to the very good laws on gun control. We don't have that as much of an incidence as other states. But I think for a first step, it's really how to not tell, because, it's not, even though City of Palo Alto, that's their main, other than supporting PSN Collaborative, their main contribution to the collaboration has been, the means restriction activities on the railway. But the work of this means restrictions group is to really inform anyone. So like, there's the Norm Mineta Center for Transportation and so forth. So, and the reason why some of these work groups came up again was more about how to engage, what was the interest of our leadership team. So, and then finally, youth voice is really about how do we elevate the voice so they're not just some, I'll be blunt, token. They're actually at the table helping drive our strategic direction, sharing their stories, and really giving that connection to our mission. So, any questions about the work groups?
I thought the students that were at that session the other night were surprisingly candid.
Yes.
The youth voice is obviously interesting.
Yeah, so that was one of the first low-hanging fruit coming into the organization or collaborative. So we have these monthly collaborative meetings, and I'll have a slide that shows when's our next one. Where it's really for anyone who has a interest in our mission and also want to network and maybe share opportunities. So rather than just hearing from the partners, we thought let's have a youth in action. And it's really about, yes, there are some organizations that are programs developed by the organization, but like in the beginning, we actually had youth groups, individuals who sort of launched youth groups in their own schools to tell the story why. And then, of course, they would have their advisor there to support them. Another example is during June Pride Month, and especially in light of the Orlando massacre. So we had already invited Outlet in advance to just talk about it, but then providing them a forum to just really raise consciousness and awareness. And the participant was a transgender youth leader. He, was from Palo Alto, and he shared his story. And then a board member who was a parent from Palo Alto. So that's the sort of like the youth voice. And then the Partners in Action really shares their mission work, and it really allows opportunity for collaboration. Okay, so any more questions about the work group? Okay, so, and feel free to do my time check. So when I was hired, so even though we have all the work that's going, and for me, when I say our work, it's really not Project Safety Net, it's the partners. Project Safety Net is more just sort of that base, that foundation to provide that opportunity. But as an executive director, when I was hired and I joined in January, so I'm entering my fourth quarter, one is to establish an executive board, which is very different from the leadership team. The vision is really looking at executive boards similar to a board of directors at a nonprofit who would be dealing with the more strategic alliances, fundraising, and governance. And as I mentioned at our meeting yesterday, I was sharing that one's pretty much on hold because of, you can't really establish an executive board if you don't really unsure what the infrastructure and so forth. And I'm the type about, this is a small enough community that we have a lot of engaged individuals right away. It's like, before you bring any individuals on board, it's important to have your ducks in a row and so forth. So then when you recruit for an executive board, you can be strategic on identifying key individuals who can really leverage each other's resources and expertise, and that sort of developing that mix. So as I mentioned, strengthening and shape the infrastructure. So in addition to just dealing with the pillars of, collaborative governance and so forth, it's also just a sustainability plan and a business operational plan, staffing plan. So I'm doing that in simultaneously with the other work that's should be a little bit more community and participatory. The third one is, I mentioned, elevate and integrate youth voice. I feel by engaging them not only at the meetings where they're able to have a platform within our own governance as we're doing our work group, but also bringing more youth community partners. Because right now, frankly, Project Safety Net from a youth perspective has been like, oh, that's an us and they. In reality, our mission should be we. I mean, like anyone, whether you're a resident, a business owner, a community leader, a student, Project Safety Net, there should be someone should resonate to that. They could be part of, in that activity. Fourth, evaluate and recommend a fiscal agents. So right now, I'm very fortunate that the City of Palo Alto, having worked with other collaborations, one of the challenges with collaborations is sustainability, and for City of Palo Alto to make that commitment to financially underwrite and invest says a lot, but that's not sustainable. And also, but there are also the trade-offs where, in regards to identity, those who may not be close to Project Safety Net may say that PSN is a city program, and then vice versa, those might feel that, ideally in a true collaborative, we're all wanting to move forward on an agenda, but there are times where the city of Palo Alto may have to recuse itself. So I think what happened is the leadership and other partners felt it might be a good time to see whether or not PSN should be its own 501c3 or nested with another 501c3, so they can either maybe pursue more funding, as well as have a little bit more freedom in really how you mobilize, the community. But I'm doing just sort of a pro-cons, and it's really going to be up to the leadership and the partners and the full collab to decide what is best for our youth and our work. So. And then finally, collective impact model. It's rather new in the broader society community. It was published in the Stanford Social Innovation Review monograph. For me, it's been around about 5 years, and a lot of United Way organizations employ it, utilize it for dealing with poverty issues. I've learned about private insurers use it for, how do you mobilize your employee wellness, but the communities that they employ. But for us, it's really about youth well-being, and I see it's a community organizing, mobilizing framework, and it's really developing a strategic plan based on these 5 conditions. One is our backbone support, which is us, the City of Palo Alto right now, and my 1.5 team, and having a common agenda, mutually reinforcing activity, and continuous communication and shared measurements. So just some highlights of pictures, kind of images from the first 9 months. Here's some pictures of youth engagement, just as I kind of shared, from speaking, sponsoring youth involvement in the community, and just them participating. And then this just highlights of some images of our collaborative meetings. And most of them have been kindly housed at our Rinconada Library, so thank you. That's a big support. And then And then here, community campaigns, and this is where I think where, other than, yes, providing space, but we had a wonderful conversation with Gayatri and then Jenny as well, that, our role with Project Safety Net is really to kind of, how can we provide consultative assistance on how to raise some awareness. So one of the low-hanging fruit, because we always like to start with that, is that maybe during the three-pillar campaigns that PSN is going to embark in, because it's something that the library can really work on, whether it's really building upon some of the things that you already do, where you might have a book of the month, but the theme might be on mental health, and you have conversation, but it's really you as who focus on library can do the fun and creative, but it's really about leveraging what you already do and not really about changing, and that's really what collective impact is about. And then finally, as I was telling you, the CDC's SAMHSA EPI 8 on youth suicides. So so those have been really the major focus of some action or outcome activities in the interim, in an absentia of a very clear strategic plan with, milestones and impacts. And then just to save some time, so I don't know if this would be of interest of you, and we can talk a bit offline, but the EPI 8 on youth suicide, I was going to spend some time on the history, some milestones, and how we've been engaging on it. So rather to go over, I could pause and say if you have any questions about what we've done so far this past year, and then if what would be very important to you to know about EPI 8.
One of the things I didn't say explicit, it may be buried in some of
Yeah.
the other discussions, is talking to the students themselves and saying, what bothers you? Why do you feel like you have to do something like this? And I know that there's been some of that actually been done, but it's not explicitly spelled out as a line item in there. And I just wondered, is it worth putting down as a separate thing, or is it kind of included ordinarily in some of the other lines?
That's a very good question, Commissioner. So, yes, so as you know, from only my own historical experience, in the past year, there has been these community dialogues sponsored by WOPAC, which is the Welcoming and Openness Palo Alto Committee, and they are actually facilitated by young, alumni, and how they define alumni is individuals who've graduated from the high schools. They've also have Youth Speaks Out, which is that art installation where it highlights sort of like using artwork, the stories about why, in an anonymous, safe manner. So, and then when we had the EPI 8, we held 2 youth conversation groups because, again, they were a community that was excluded when the EPI 8 epidemiologists were in town. So I think in the youth voice work, some of the short term, because this really, I feel like it's a long term and it needs to be really interwoven in all our work. It's not just a separate goal. If we're really going to do a youth well-being, then we think about it in how we do our governance structure. We think about it in how we do our trainings. We think about it in how we do the health component access. So, and how we do in our policy and advocacy. So right now, it's not like this is what we've done yet. And when we have the PSN 2.0, as I've been coining it, and have a very clear strategic plan, there will be some measurable objectives. And one of the strategies, too, is that once we develop this strategic roadmap, yes, we would want to share it with the leadership and the community collaborative, but more importantly, definitely share it with the youth first to say, is this incorporating what you've asked for? Does this kind of address it? And then they can sort of give their blessing or modification.
Let me give an example of an action that could be taken. I don't know how you'd fit it in there, but in a number of cases, the youth that committed suicide or went wild and tried to shoot people told some of his other students he was having a problem.
Yes.
And he was thinking about doing this. So you have to have a system where the students, when they hear something weird or disturbing, they don't just say, oh, well, that's odd. They report it to the appropriate person. And you have to have some kind of a system that tells people, This is something that's normally happening. If you have awareness of it, these are the people you report it to, so that they understand and they pass it on. Because typically, when one student says this to another student, the other student says, "Oh, he's just kidding. You know, I don't know what he's doing." And you have to have some way of following up on it, and that's not normally done. So if you're going to have a really comprehensive approach, you have to think, how am I going to do this, and how am I going to have the kids, if they're told about something disturbing, pass it on to the right people.
You want to respond to it at the end?
Yeah,
Okay.
I would like to respond, because in the meeting that we were at, that Project Safety Net sponsored basically the other day, what they talked about was the student wellness centers at both of the high schools. And the student wellness centers are now separate rooms. They're inviting, they've had, I think, 4,500 visits to those rooms, and now what they're doing is putting the nursing, the physical and the mental and everything, it's all together in one place. And what they're trying to do is create a safe place where a student could go in and do exactly what you're talking about. So I think particularly relative to the high school, and they're talking about, can we put that lower down as well? But particularly in the high school, they've provided that kind of facility and that kind of encouragement in a safe environment. I think the school's done a good job of that.
So I just asking the question, so you're saying the school did that, or was that a project in collaboration with Project Safety Net?
Well, I think that's one of the things, I'll speak for Mary, and then she can correct me if, I think that's one of the things that I noticed in this meeting, and she listed some of it there, is Project Safety Net has done a really good job of creating a partnership environment. And that's, so it's the students' wellness centers in the schools, and the schools have large, I'm surprised the size of the staff they have, but the schools have a lot more staff than Project Safety Net has. I mean, each of those schools have 10, 12, 15 people that are in the staffing area for this kind of thing. So it's a different, but the Project Safety Net came from community concern, and what do we do? And I think, in fact, they've probably motivated the schools to do what they've done.
Thank you. And so I was going to sort of start with you. So I know it's easy for us when we think collaborative, we're very program oriented, an agency and it's like what programs and what service do you do? But what's the unique sort of niche that a collaborative is really providing that space so that it can bring awareness of what are the needs in the community and who are the partners. So he mentioned, the schools and the students, because it really was the student voice. I think they went to a school board and said, we needed this. And then, but then at the same time, they partner with adolescent counseling services and Aki to supplement. So it's how through Project Safety Net being a convener. And I think that's been always the history and my role now that I'm 100, they have now 100% dedicated executive director. I mean, it's been a yeoman's job that Rob DeGoes and Minka van der Schwag, but, they're not only just doing that work, they have library work as well as, especially Robin and Minka's doing housing and homelessness and so forth. So having 100% executive director and a halftime, now we can really bring to light what the history and the purpose and that momentum. And then going back to what the commissioner said, he's modeling a lot what the community is like, a specific strategy of intervention, if we just address this. But I come from community health education or community health system. It's like not just having that one magic bullet. They like to use the magic buckshot, still very aggressive language. But it's like, yes, we need that. And what's the key is I know they're already happening in the community, but how to elevate that so everyone can see, but more importantly, where are the synergies, the intersection, and if we have gaps, then like how do we solve those gaps? More importantly, listening to the youth to say, okay, this is a gap, this is a true gap, how do we solve it? And what I always say to think it from a positive, because there's this different ways that contribute to, that could be sort of the challenges or to trying to address youth well-being and suicide prevention. It also looks at the opportunity that we call engage we can all engage in providing that solution. So you might be more interested in the more the crisis response, but maybe, Commissioner McDougall is looking more about like how does some resiliency activities and maybe that mentoring where an older student can read and work with a younger elementary kid, and not saying one is better than the other, in a true collective impact. And he's heard this many times, and I said this is like, what drew me to this community is like, this is really big work, but the city of Palo Alto community members took that leadership in the front, and unfortunately it's had to because of the very public deaths, but it's also in the fabric of Palo Alto because this is where innovation and all the startups, and we have the basketball players and musicians, and so it's like, why can't we also be a leader in how we address youth well-being and youth suicide prevention, and where other bigger communities have challenges because of other conflicting priorities. Here, it's small and intimate, where you might say, for instance, like you got to connect with the school board, and just because we've been all interacting on different, we're able to do that easily, where maybe in other communities, it may take months to meet the right person. So there is it's like I do the analogy. I'm a child of immigrant Filipinos, but it's that family. You got your family has your back, the village, but also at the same time they know too much, right? And so you have to manage that tension. But it's all coming from a good place, and that's what I really see from this community. And I think how we can be, and we pride that in that leadership. And so there are a lot of other communities, like for instance, I just got a call from a state of Wisconsin, and they recently had a cluster of teen suicides, and learned about our work, and we're a little bit more in the forefront. So they wanted to get some insight. And so I will share, but more importantly, I'm going to connect them with community partners, and that's what I think that's valuable about what our collaboration does.
Yeah, so thank you, Mary. I think this is really, it's great that Palo Alto has been able to dedicate these resources, and you seem to have made a lot of progress. And I'm also really happy that the library has been able to support this effort, which is really great. I wonder if we have additional questions or issues that we need to address. And we do need to keep track of time because there are a lot of other things on the agenda, but this is obviously a very important one.
So I just want to talk about one thing. A big part of the presentation, or not a big part, but a part of the presentation the other day was the 41 development assets. And Monique has brought those forward in terms of what the library is trying to do is subscribe to the 41 development assets. So that was included in our packet tonight. And I've always been uncomfortable with the way it's organized. So listening to you the other day, what I did was reorganize it in my own mind, or actually on a spreadsheet, nobody should be surprised, to say, when you look at those 41 development assets, how many of them are basically the responsibility of the student? Now, the student had to have a model to get to that point, but the development asset actually says the student should do their homework or whatever. And then the second thing is, several of those are what I called either library or nonprofit contributions. And then there was the home, the home had to do this, and then there was the school had to do this, and then there was peers, creative opportunity, religion, and in fact, you just mentioned sports, and I'm not sure why sports wasn't one of the categories. But back to your board and my question there, you'll notice that when I said I came from the library and I complimented Jenny and Christine for what the library has done, that was the only point at which there was applause in the room, and we got applause. And so I would strongly suggest that the library should be included. I look at the library as not just another department in the city. I look at the library, I'm not sure if Monique agrees with me or whatever, but it is such a presence that it is its own presence, not just a piece of the city. And you can see from this chart that other than what the student owns, libraries or nonprofits own more of it. And I would encourage much more direct collaboration. I appreciate like the staff that the school has and their ability and their proximity and so on. But I would encourage both you to engage the library, and I would encourage Monique to support what Jenny and Christine and others are doing relative to engaging with you. I don't think we should be witnesses at those meetings. We should be participants in those meetings.
It's exciting to hear that from you and your leadership, because one of the things that I came into this collaborative is to look at our mission. It says youth in Palo Alto, but right now we've been just focusing a lot of efforts of youth in the Palo Alto Unified School District amongst 2 high schools. So for me, youth is who live, study, and work, because youth is also. So I'm excited because in PSN 2.0, one of the strategic plan priorities is really how you integrate developmental assets into our work. And that might, in the way that we do the work groups, it's going to be sort of the calling to all the key partners. If there's certain activities or, that resonate with you, then that'd be in the work group that you would focus on. And I know in the past, Project Safety Net, one of their responsibilities was sharing the report. But for us, as we've been discussing, it's not sharing report, but it's like prioritizing which of these developmental assets do we want to see a change. Then how do we bring at the table the partners that have those touch points based on that to really make impact, and then we could see 3 years down the road before the next developmental answer what changes we made. So I'm going to look forward to the library or whomever when the roadmap comes out, finding those places that will be strategic, but then also listening to you as the commissioner, because we all have like competing priorities. I will be also proactive in Gaitra. We have already made a commitment to meet regularly so we can brainstorm and strategize of where we can leverage their work, but in and how we can address our mission.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just to be clear, so when I came to Palo Alto in 2011, I did approach the folks at Project Safety Net and asked, why isn't someone from the library on there? And I think that they were exclusively like the volunteers or the people assigned to it. The library is not part of community services, so I thought, I know that they were working for a balance, and I explained that when I was an adjunct professor at San Jose State in the library school, I used the developmental assets as the framework for my class. And actually, I've been trained by the Search Institute as part of training for young adult librarians that the American Library Association did. So I was really excited to see a community that had embraced this and knew that although you only give us credit for some of the assets, we feel like every asset can be covered by the library because of the collections. And that is a key that, even if you don't have maybe a caring school climate or an involved parent, there are many fiction and nonfiction books that could support learning and understanding about that. So from my perspective, the library is really one of the best assets to help support these developmental assets. And of course, as you know, when we give you reports about programming in children's and teen services, we include the number of the assets that we think that program directly addresses. So and they're posted in all of our children's areas. So we really feel strongly that and agree with you that the library is really the way to go. So I went to meetings for a long time until I could get Jenny freed up to go to those, because I think she's the more direct person, and Gayatri together, I think we'll come up with some new ways of looking at this. And one of the things that was interesting is one of my students at that time said, I'm really uncomfortable with the kind of religion aspect to this, but she came back like a week or two later and said, you know what, in my family, social activism was like a religion, and I'm substituting that for religion, and that made her totally fine with the whole thing. So really good framing, and so I just, I want to be clear that for years now we've been actively looking at this, and when the first survey came back from the students and reading for pleasure seemed to be a hard asset to tackle, it seemed like there would not, it was it was considered a high, sort of problematic to be able to do anything to affect that. I said, well, as the librarian, I see that as a challenge for me
Yeah,
then.
give us
So
a chance.
we will take that on, but we, thoroughly understand that students have a lot of reading to do, and reading for pleasure is not necessarily high on their list, so.
If I can just quickly respond, Monique, I give us credit for all 41. Do not misunderstand. No, when I was looking at this, I looked at the sort of buckets it fell in based on the wording of the development assets, and particularly the ones that are student self/model. There has to be a model. The opportunity for the library to providing that positive role model is clearly outstanding. And in fact, in the bullying presentation, I wrote down the names of the books and whatnot, and I was trying to be brief because June told me I had to be brief, so I left out the books part. But it's I totally support what you say, and I cannot be more enthusiastic about the library's opportunity and past participation in this whole venture. So
Yeah.
if I can help the collaboration, stick me in somewhere. Either Monique stick me in or Mary stick me in.
The stepping in toes, but if the project safety net collaborates like it's standing on in the committee, of course, the Palo Alto Library, it's not just about being a part of the city. Yeah, so thank you so much. And if you have any questions on the PowerPoints, that because you have and you want to do a more informal follow-up, feel free to call or email me. My contact information is on that PowerPoint as well. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you very much, Mary. And thank you to the library staff for your involvement. We hope we'll hear more, and we expect we will, right? And actually, just as a side, the 41 development assets was in our packet. And, I've read it before, but I read it again. And so I said, oh, and I made Xerox copies for my grown children for their parenting edification.
Yeah.
So, it's dry, but
Well,
it really is good.
It is very good, and if you go to the Search Institute website, you'll find it in multiple languages, and you'll find it adapted for different age groups. So one specifically for teens, one that's really more child, and one for adults, because we all need those assets. Those are
That's
basics.
how to be well balanced.
A well-balanced human being, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Thank you very much, Mary. Have a good evening. Okay, we can move on to our next item, which is the Library Volunteer Program, presentation by Guthrie. So thank you very much for putting it together, and go for it.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's really a delight to do a presentation on volunteers because volunteering is how I entered the libraries. I was a library volunteer and got to know about how wonderful the library was for someone, especially new to this country, and then decided that I wanted to be a librarian. So, 18 years later, I am still a part of the library, and I was also a teen services librarian for 8 years and worked with hundreds of volunteers, and needless to say, that was one of the best part of my job, is to interact with teen volunteers and actually work with the developmental assets and see them grow into responsible young adults with an interest in civic engagement. That was such a delight to see. And as a community librarian with Cupertino Library, I also worked with volunteers like the commission and the friends and the foundation members. And again, the impact that they had on library services. And it just tells you how much more volunteering adds to the library's richness. So I'm really delighted to do this. So, my first thing was like, why do we do volunteering? it really connects to the library's mission as Palo Alto Library connects and strengthens our diverse community through knowledge, resources, and opportunities. And I think truly it speaks for our mission for volunteering as gives an opportunity for the entire community to bring that knowledge, resources, and opportunities to each other. And it really provides our community members opportunities to share their skills with others, also provides opportunities to socialize, develop new skills. And last but not least, volunteers are excellent library advocates. I call them informal library ambassadors that can tell the library story better than library staff members. All right, so at Palo Alto, I would say our volunteers do 3 different kinds of roles. A big part of them assist with our routine tasks. So that helps us move our library staff hours to doing some more different services for the community. There's a huge number of volunteers that assist with our programming. You know, you name it, from craft help to crowd control. They're always there, especially with our children and teen programs. The more interesting ones are, we've also gotten some really great program presenters. Not only are they helping us with programs, they're actually creating and delivering programs. And last is, it does really help us provide a safe and productive place for our youth. I think that's the last one, even though it's not really a separate one. I did want to call out to the fact that there's really, it is a really nice place for the youth to be engaged with other youth and also be a part of a larger community. So I think it's a great place to be. Okay, for some reason. Okay. So our regular library tasks support volunteers. They do a variety of things, as you can see, from shelf reading to newspaper processing to cleaning, self-check stations. I mean, they really do a lot of things that helps us move that time from a staff member so they can do something else for our service, improve our service. And you could see one of our volunteers very diligently processing newspapers, and one other person that's shelf reading. So we really do depend a lot upon our volunteers to do shelf reading and newspaper processing especially.
What is shelf reading?
So all the books and the materials in the on the shelves, they are always not in order because people come and move it. And it's really wonderful to have people that will come and do that. Okay. All right, so the next is various kinds of program support that volunteers do. As you can see, there's a variety of things they do with that. I want to call out to the last picture where there is a bobcat. It's a stuffed bobcat. And that's a very unique kind of volunteering situation. It's actually one of our staff members' husband, who was a park ranger, who came in, was a part of our camping program. And so, needless to say, a lot of our volunteers are also family members that are roped into providing some great programming for us. I heard that it was a very, very successful program, but I really thought that was really a cute one to do.
And they left the bobcat, so a lot of people took their picture with it. It was great.
I didn't know that one.
Because, you'd walk into the children's room and there was this cat. And it was just, like, people would freeze,
Yeah.
It was perfect, so.
So then we have our program presenters. So I've highlighted the 3 programs that are really running with the help of our program presenters. So the first one is an ESL class. Currently, we have two ESL programs. One is a conversation class, and the other is an advanced class. And both of them are very, very popular, completely run by volunteers, two volunteer teachers, as well as 5 assistants. And what I'm told is that the librarian now literally has to lock the door so that if more people come, we can't really accommodate. So we are actually looking into, how do we expand this program? And we're also thinking of doing a volunteer book club, ESL book club. And if you know of anyone who would be interested in running it, that would be great. Let's talk.
Don would love to help you.
I'll connect with both of you then. So on the other side is our writing project. It has a little bit of a very interesting story. 4 teenage girls just approached one of our librarians and said, we want a space where we can have our own writing club. And then the librarian said, you know what? I can provide you a space every week if you make it free and open to everybody. And that's how it started. And it's a very, very robust program that that is truly, I think it's a testimony to what teens can do when their passions are engaged.
That must be asset number 20.
Absolutely. A former teen services librarian, actually always a teen services librarian, I agree. The last one is a program, a Google search program that's offered 6 times a year. And it's contributed by Don Russell, who is a research scientist at Google. And what they do is, what he commits to is 6 programs throughout the year, 2 of them in other languages. We already did a program in Mandarin, and we're working with him to present something in Russian. So. All right, so the unintended but great benefit is also some of the volunteers turn into future staff, like
Do you have any
Kathy.
examples?
Yes, but there's actually another person who, her name is Kathy, and she is at our Mitchell Park Library now, and she was a volunteer for several years. So I just wanted to highlight that too, is very often we, especially like when you work with teens and young adults, it does give them a very good understanding of maybe there's a librarian career ahead for them.
I was a volunteer and then became a librarian.
See? It's the same story, really.
It really is.
Okay, so if you want to know about contribution of volunteers, so I've tracked the last 3 years. Pretty much our volunteer numbers have stayed the same, and our hours are also pretty similar. And that's a lot of hours if you look at it. And the lovely picture next door is next to the hours is our reading pause to read program, where kids can come and read to a dog. And that's also another volunteer program.
Do we count the dogs as volunteers or their handlers?
Both.
Both.
I don't think so. I think it's only the handlers,
So-
but I think.
I was
One of
flying
the
through
things I
my,
find interesting about the chart is that the number of volunteers does not correspond to the number of hours.
Correct.
In fact, in 2015, when we had the most volunteers, we had fewer hours worked than 2014 and 2016. So my assumption is that there are a fair number of people, 20 or 30 of them, came to volunteer and spent very little time actually volunteering. They gave up after a short time.
Or the 129 volunteered a lot more hours than the 156. I mean, we do have certain requirements like 2 hours a week or something like that. But
Right.
there are some that would go above and beyond. It also sometimes depends on programming. So
Right.
if we have certain programming that needs a lot more volunteering hours, then definitely that would show.
And when we were under construction, the volunteers, as we got ready for the openings, the volunteers did a lot of concentrated help to prep with that. And we had like a school classroom would volunteer for a Saturday, or we had volunteers on the opening, the grand opening at Mitchell Park. And that was their only ever or time that they volunteered with us. And it was only for a one-day event. So, so again, this is probably 2016 is getting more consistent in terms of what we might experience, but I think Gayatri will go forward and show you some ideas that we have coming up.
But do I have it right? That's on average, it's about 25 hours a year per volunteer, or 2 hours a month, so.
Well, I think
And it's up and down a little bit from that.
one reason I believe we're actually focusing on this is that some of the statistics did show either number of hours down or, so apparently it could have been 2012, 2013, 2014 span rather than 2015, 16. I don't remember.
No, even
But,
these numbers show down because
Yeah,
in 2014, it was 30 hours average, and then 21, and now back to 25.
okay, so, yeah.
All right, so it does take a village to do this. So there's a big volunteer coordinator team that works with our volunteers. Each library has a liaison that works with our volunteers. And then there's myself and one of our senior librarians, Jay Yoon, that also works with the bigger initiatives, and Carol Galushi, who does our statistics help. And at Mitchell Park, there's actually 2 people working with volunteers because we do have our teen services librarian working with teens specifically.
Are there any volunteer coordinators?
No.
Okay, yeah.
And is Mitchell Park the only place where you have teen volunteers?
We do have some in children's, basically most of the children's volunteers. There's actually quite a bit of teen volunteers there too.
Thanks.
All right, so the key tasks that the volunteer coordinator team generally does is in recruiting, and then they do orientation and training of the volunteers. We keep all kinds of statistics on volunteers. We do evaluation. There's quite a number of teens that would come and ask for a letter. I mean, there's just a variety of things that people ask for, and so they do evaluation and they provide that. And last but not least, they work on the volunteer appreciation event, which was a very successful event last week, in fact. So, how do we do publicity? Really, word of mouth is pretty big one, but we also have the City of Palo Alto page. That's pretty popular. We get a lot of signups from there. When you look at that page, to the right, you see a small box saying get involved. That is the volunteer match, which is a volunteer website that we also go and put in anytime we have special volunteer activities that we want to recruit someone, we will go and post there. So we do get good amount of volunteers from Volunteering Match. And this is the online application that volunteers fill out. And one thing that I did want to mention is the minimum age to volunteer at the library is 14. So we provide opportunities for middle school kids, but they will have to be 14. So what's next? So one of the things that when Monique said, volunteers, that's one of the things you're going to be doing in this first 6 months. I said, okay, so the first thing we did is we're looking at our process improvement, and we've recently acquired a volunteer software. So that will help us, it takes an enormous amount of time to put people's names and, draw all kinds of statistic information. And we think the volunteer software is going to really help with that. And at this point, our senior librarian, Jay, is being trained on the software, and she's the trainer. She'll be training all the other liaisons on that. So hopefully that will cut down a lot of regular, normal, work things, and then we can actually concentrate on recruiting more volunteers, which is the third one, is the presenter recruitment. The fact that 3 of our very successful programs are run by volunteers tells us that there's a great opportunity to get more skilled volunteers that can be content presenters in the library. I mean, this is a place where there's the best and the brightest live, and I'm sure there's a lot of them that have excellent skills that they would like to contribute to the community. And it's really a big goal of us that we would be able to identify and bring them as speakers, as presenters, as, project, anything that would enable us to expand what we are presenting right now.
So do you have any goals? If you go back to that table.
Sure.
If you go back to the table that said how many volunteers you had, I think that, in fact, June was right. We were concerned as recently as, last year, maybe the year before, with the numbers there. And I think June's right. I think the prior years, 2012, 2013, there was probably double that number. I can't remember, but I think it was a much bigger number. So have you thought about 2017? Do you want to have 200 volunteers, or?
I would say the couple things that struck me was, we want to have a very quality volunteer program. The numbers could be great. I think if we want to increase the number of volunteers, we need to have programs that can use a lot of volunteers to do something. For example, we have a really great Bike Pals program, and we're thinking about, what if we have some volunteers to help with that? If we're doing some kind of a program where it's a pop-up library, so then we would need more volunteers. So anytime we could do a big project like that, we would definitely need more volunteers. So we're definitely looking at it. I'm more interested in also developing the skilled volunteers coming to the library and presenting programs for the public, which I think really will add to the richness of what we're offering. There's just so much available here, so I think it would be really important to bring them to the library and connect them with others. People do come and, they look at the variety, and then it adds to that richness of what we're providing. So, but I do want to increase the number of volunteers. We've just started working on it, and I think part of the things that we can put more effort into volunteering once the volunteer software starts working much better. So our efforts on, just recording things can move into actually recruiting.
Yeah, I think that the two things that you're looking at, process improvement, looking at whether there are tools that you can use to improve, and capitalizing on the things that you've seen to be successful, which is that having outside presenters do programs allows you to have some really good programs, and possibly some more programs than you would otherwise have. I think that's great, we hope to see you be successful in these efforts. So
Can I
Yeah.
add, 2011, we had 147 volunteers. 2012, we had 156. So I don't know that the number of people have changed that much, but in 2012, we had over 6,500 hours of volunteer time. So that may be a change, you know, and changes in what we're doing in the library also affect it. Things like changing automated materials handling, changing how we handle holds lists, changing all of those things. If those are gaining greater efficiency, then perhaps people are volunteering less time. But like with the employees, it may be higher quality work, or, you know, again, with doing presentations or things like that, it may be something that's not as grunt work. It may be a little more glamorous.
Are you saying that automation put volunteers out of business?
No, no, I'm saying it freed them to do something more interesting. But sometimes I think some people come in and they just want something that's a no-fuss kind of
So that actually,
activity.
I will actually probably someday come and volunteer to read shelves. It's one of those things I like to do. So there you go. So now I'm on record.
Well, we used to, in a previous job, the first 2 weeks of any volunteer's time was spent shelf reading. And if they could stand up to that, then they were allowed to do other work. So it's a test.
I'm not going to volunteer because I don't want to become a librarian.
So actually, I'm going to say, we need to observe the discipline of turning off our mics if we're not speaking.
Let me just make one more comment. One of the things you might consider doing is going to some of the technical companies around here, Facebook, Google, and ask if they have anybody who would like to volunteer to talk to teens about different types of activities they might be interested in, different types of achievements they'd like to make, and get them working together and talking together. And I think somebody gave a program for talk on robots, for example, would be very popular. So you might try that, you know, go to some of the companies around here and ask them if they want somebody to speak in a library presentation.
Definitely. I think that's a great idea, and I'll keep that. That would be a great way to go.
So I would include taking surveys, and I would include mapping on that list. I think that those are two things that need to be talked about. But so I would like to suggest that that if we're looking at the volunteer program, you've suggested two things. One is the shelf reading, another librarian, sub-librarian kinds of things, because I understand the difference between what a volunteer can do versus what a librarian can do. I would like to see the statistics separated into those kinds of things and the program kind of things. I think, in fact, we're getting slightly confused about what the volunteers could do, because I think a part of our initial thought was, could volunteers do more so that we could stay open more hours? And part of the answer to that was no, because those are the kind of things that librarians have to do, and we understand that. But even so, I think you suggested that they are doing some kinds of things like shelf reading that help. And I would like to suggest that the statistics be separate.
Okay.
And then I think you could have two different kinds of goals in terms of what kind of people you're trying to recruit for what purpose. And I would like to see the idea that we have a goal of, and I understand you want to say, oh, the numbers don't matter because it's quality. And so I guess my request would be, so I want to know what your goal is relative to quality volunteers. But understanding that, I think, would be useful, and I think it would help you too if you had a framework that you were trying to achieve.
That's a really great suggestion. I will look at it right now. That's not how we've collected the information, but I think that would be a very interesting exercise, and I'd actually like to do that.
Yeah, because the other thing is that 2 hours a month is not a heavy burden, because that's what you're getting out of your volunteers. So I guess the other statistics would, if you looked at it per person per month, number of hours. Is there a way to say we don't need more volunteers, we just need to get 2.5 hours or 3 hours? Is there a minimum is there a minimum you want to go for? Because if you're getting 2 hours average, I'll bet that's 1 hour from some people and 6 hours from others.
Right.
And I would think we need to know that, or you need to know that. I don't know that we need to know it, but I think you need to know it.
I think that's a really good comment, and one of the things that I would like to know, which I don't at this point, is to understand, what kind of things the volunteers are doing. I mean, there's a list of things that they're doing, but I'd like to see, for example, I'd like to see how many teen volunteers are involved, and
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
so there's obviously, I think the software will help us a little bit more on that. Right now, you don't want to make the statistic collection such huge a burden that it takes more hours than actually the volunteers contribute. So
Yeah,
so there's
this-
that balance that we want to keep. But this is a great suggestion. I'll definitely look into this and see what the software can do. I actually don't know what the software can do, but I'm told that it can do a lot of different things. So I'm hoping that I can come back to you and tell you more about the software.
Well, that would be great. And I think the other reason we thought it would be good to talk about this is just that we do have a very large community of people who care about the library, care about Palo Alto's services, and often are looking for volunteer opportunities. So I think that you guys have been pretty happy with the volunteers that you get and the number of volunteers that you get. But we want to make sure that you have a plethora if you need it.
Yes.
So,
Well, keep in mind, too, that a lot of them that want to volunteer for the library do volunteer for Full Pal. I mean, there's a big
Oh,
Full
sure.
Pal. So when you look at these hours, it could be that some of the Full Pal volunteers do like 1 hour here and then also do Full Pal stuff, so.
so
I'm
you're
not
saying,
sure.
yeah, so okay. So you just said that people who volunteer for Full Pal also help with, volunteer at the
Some of
library.
the volunteers.
And so some of that's double, yeah.
Some of them
yeah.
have dual roles, so.
Another statistic you'd like to see.
Yeah, exactly. I would
And
definitely like that.
once again, for the second time, we really appreciate the help we get from Full Pal. Okay, thank you very much, K3. Any other
Thank you so
questions? We're
much.
good?
Any other questions?
Well, my only last question would be, could we invite you back in 6 months?
Absolutely.
All right. All right. So our next item is the study session with the city council. So for this, I'm assuming everybody had a chance to read the things that were included in the packet, which included Monique's summary of what each of the city council members said. There is something on here. It says that Councilmember Liz Niss was absent, but she did come partway through. At the very near the end, yeah. And then we have notes I wrote, notes Don wrote. So I think what we really want to talk about is what are the action items out of this. I think we were very happy that the council was attentive, they were engaged, they had a lot of questions as an overall pattern. I think they all could see that there has been some request for possibly more hours of open hours for the library, and it's not so much open total hours as can all the libraries be open longer hours. We've recently expanded the hours and normalized the hours so that it's much easier to tell when the library is open, what days, what hours. It's much easier to remember. And yet, they aren't all open from 10 till 9 every day, and which, even if we were open 10 to 9, I'm sure people would ask if we could please be open 10 to 11. But it would cost a lot more money to expand the hours at this point in time. And yet, the city council did ask us, well, what could we do? What do you recommend if we did something? So the question is, how can we help them? How can we provide them more data? Or how can we help answer that question for them? So I'm now done talking.
Well, there are two, let's call it library hour areas where we could consider expanding, at least consider it. One of them is Mitchell Park is closed until I think at 1 o'clock on Saturdays and Thursdays. No, wait a minute, recently reopened it, and opened it at 10 o'clock, yeah.
10 a.m.
Yeah.
every day.
Now, yeah, that's right, they moved it up.
10 a.m. every day.
But the other one is College Terrace, which I believe is closed Sunday and Monday
Sunday, Monday, and Thursday.
and Thursday. So do we want to consider opening College Terrace another day of the week? Is that worth considering?
So I think the question that, I remember that Councilman Holman asked that, and then they all asked similar type questions. Is there some way we can think about expanding somehow? What do you know about whether it would help or not? Which, so the obvious candidates are downtown, the days that are closed, or College Terrace, the days that are closed. And I just don't know how to think, actually, about picking which day or whatever. I'm done now.
Monique, wasn't your suggestion that we should do a survey? Or was that,
So, yeah, and not just an open-ended survey, but rather, these are your choices, right, with specific range of time. Because in my experience doing these surveys, we should be open 24 hours a day. At least, right? So, and it would be advisory only, and of course, the point that I made was I don't want to have to come back in 2 years and cut back hours. I want this to be sustainable, which I know they cannot guarantee, but I think it's one of those things that you need to look at. So I think that, either using surveys as well as perhaps having community conversations about what might be, how do you really want to use the library? It may not be that the open hours are the be-all, end-all, or it may be that, yes, they are, but what we really need is, that suggestion of a sort of quiet hour, the first, from 9 to 10, sort of like that Adult Swim idea, right? And not having computers on at that time, having it be quiet, doing something that's less distracting and serves people with differing needs who might not be able to be in there when there are a lot of people or a lot of noise, things like that going on. So, so yes, I think we could definitely do surveys to determine that. We can certainly, we roughly priced out what an hour of service would cost. So that's certainly something that we can do, we can work on.
so you say you can do it, or are you planning to do it, or what action should we take, or what action are you taking?
Yeah, how do we want to go about it? Do we need a,
Well, since your role is not operational, it's more advisory,
Right.
You can advise me on what you think the steps are that you would like for us to take, because hours are of course not the only thing. And a lot of times, you'll see questions on, why are things that way? Sometimes there's no answer to the why, but what I would suggest, or there are things too that we actually do offer that they're just not aware of, right? And so that kind of thing is one of the things we can certainly answer the questions. And what I'm planning to do is prepare like just an informational memo that will go review, some of the things that we discussed, answer the questions that they asked us, because there are some specific questions, and it doesn't mean we have to go there, we just add it to the agenda as an informational item. Things like use and satisfaction of the meeting rooms. We are rated in the online system for making reservations, room reservations. There are people who have rated our rooms, so that is an indication of satisfaction. We can talk about the numbers and the use that is in the annual statistical report, so that specific thing is, so that's what I'm going to do, is go through and answer those questions. Then I would suggest that, that I will list what actions we will take on certain items. There's, the biggest thing was the open hours. And, we can do anything with enough money. So if we wanted to open all 5 libraries every day of the week, if we had enough money to do that reasonably, then we could do that.
And Monique and I figured out that would take $1 million.
About $1 million.
Well, exactly. I mean, I think that we believe it would be wonderful, and as does the rest of the community, for the libraries to be open longer than the stores are open on, all the days that longer than the grocery stores are open, maybe, or the same as the grocery stores. But I think the council knows that then if they go to have to spend the money, that there are a lot of places that we might need to spend the money, such as on the schools, so those are important trade-offs. But I think they really asked for more information, and the 2 pieces of information I heard was, can I have a comparison to the other communities around in terms of number of the hours that they are open, not the number of total hours, but what is the standard open time for the libraries that are nearby, and what's the cost? What would it, if they were going to be open all that time, what would be the cost? But the other thing was the characterization for College Terrace or downtown. What is the perceived benefit? People could come, but do you know anything? Can you tell anything that indicates that people might come or would come, so is College Terrace used more during the week than during the day? Or is there anything you can see? And that would be from you, I think, because I don't think we know.
Right.
And I'm not sure a survey we would get interest, but you don't want to necessarily go out and create a problem by asking for something that we can't afford to do. So I think your memo to the city council is actually the right thing, as long as it contains those things. So are you guys satisfied with your cost? Is that what you want to would report?
No, I think the issue on cost, Monique said properly, that we could go to city council and our current budget is $8 million, and so we could say, 10% increase to $9 million, and you could have all the hours you possibly want. I think Monique is absolutely right. That's not the issue. The issue is a year from now, or 2 years from now, when the economy's gone bad, and city council is sitting there saying, what do we cut out of the budget? Monique doesn't want to be in the position to have them come back and say, that $1 million we gave you, well, we're taking that away and another $1 million, so you're back to $6 million, and figure out how to, and that's the risk. So I look at this and say, I think Monique's right. There's things in here that, relative to ours, I would trust Monique that she can come back with a response that says, we're going to figure that out. We're going to talk to the community in various ways, and maybe she doesn't even have to be specific in the short-term response, because I would think a shorter-term response is better than waiting until you get it all figured out. Something that quickly goes back and says, we heard you, we're going to investigate it, we'll come back and tell you how. And then there's other things in here, just like you said, user satisfaction for meeting rooms. There's a category of give them the answer they were looking for. And then there's other thing, then I would say that's really the two categories of things that were in here. We're going to look into it. We'll come back and tell you in what detail. I thought there was a third category.
Well, there's the question on languages from Corey.
Oh, yeah, but that's in the answer, in the question of giving the answer. I think the third category, Monique, is the category of collaboration between the teen center and the community center. I put that in the political, or not political, political small p category that really is just an opening to say, to give a presentation or a discussion of, we're totally committed to the 41 development and blah, blah, blah. I don't think we need to enter it. Let them go investigate what's happening with the teen center the community center, as opposed to us, or you being responsible for answering that. So I would say those are the three categories. And I think from our perspective as advisory commission, I think we could only advise you to do that sooner rather than later. And I think it's legitimate that we asked that because it was a joint library commission meeting. And if we can do something to help with that, that would be good. But otherwise, if you could help us by helping us look responsive, we'd appreciate that.
Sure. I would, yeah, I think that the memo will come from the LAC and myself, or me on behalf of the LAC. And when it comes out, then I would encourage you to follow up with your council buddies to ask further. Do you have any other additional questions, or did this bring anything else to mind as a way of, reinforcing it and letting them know that you are responsive and paying attention?
Good advice, thank you.
I think it's perfectly reasonable to say we want to have an expansion of hours, because we've heard that from the public. They want to be able to use the library more often. And the council members said, gee, why don't we have it open more? So obviously, even though they didn't say it, they know it's going to cost money. As far as worrying about having those hours cut back if the economy goes bad, if we didn't add hours, they would be cutting back anyway. They'd be cutting back from our existing level because they're going to be cutting anyway. So it doesn't bother me that we're going to add hours and have a risk of having them cut those back later if their budget goes in the tank. So I think that what we should be doing is looking at what the public wants, what the council suggested was a good idea, and move forward with it. As far as languages, my recollection, a couple of years ago, the most popular language was Italian.
Yes, in the request, right.
And I think that expanding our non-English collection, starting off with the ones that are most popular, like Italian, is also a valid thing we should be doing. And tell the council, well, we're having a lot of interest and demand for books in foreign languages, and these are the 3 or 4 foreign languages that are the most popular, and so we're going to ask for funding to put in more of those on the shelf. And I think that's a reasonable thing to ask for. They don't have to give it to us, but I think it's perfectly reasonable to point out that there's a need for it, and we should be requesting it.
No, we're going to ask for a separate room in the Cupboardley Center for Nigel so that he can sell more books, so that he can provide us with more foreign language book money.
So Nigel, if you could just please collect more foreign language books, that would be.
We do have foreign language sections in all 3 of our rooms.
I know you do, yeah, thank you.
I was paying attention.
So I think are there any other items that came up at the joint city council meeting that we want to bring up and discuss at this meeting, or should we move on?
No, I thought it was very successful. I think our chairman did a nice job of leading us through that, so thank you, June. And,
Thank you.
Yeah, you did.
And Monique, if you can help us be responsive, as I said, that would be outstanding. Thank you.
Thank you for doing the memo.
You're welcome.
We will look forward to it. Will it come by email?
It will come via email.
Okay.
Yeah, well, it will be, it'll go first to council. I'll send it to you at the same time that I send it, that we add it to Minute Track to go. It'll be part of the packet that the council gets at an upcoming meeting
Okay,
as an informational item. So they won't discuss it, they just receive it as
Okay.
information.
good.
And your question was, what days would people like a weekday rather than a weekend at College Terrace?
Or what, if any, trends or observations do you guys have that you can add, to answer that question without doing a survey? Because I think that was the question that begged a survey.
Yeah, so we had expanded hours at both downtown and College Terrace while the main library was
That's true.
closed, even
Okay.
though we had a temporary main library. And the community, even though we warned them, we're gonna go back to these regular, what we saw as our regular hours. They did like it, and a lot of the people, like we mentioned at College Terrace, they come from the surrounding businesses. They're not necessarily people in the neighborhood all the time. So, Thursday was popular. There was one night a week at each branch, each of those branches, and that was popular. I mean, it was appreciated. So could we be open maybe like Monday through Saturday at both downtown and College Terrace? I'm sure that we could. I don't know that it would draw circulation away from another library, because I think some people really focus on their neighborhood library, and even if you tell them, oh, it's on the shelf at Rinconada, or oh, Rinconada's open right now till 9, it's too far, I don't want to go, and it's like you could walk there in 15, 20 minutes, it's not that far, but, that's sort of the feeling, so everybody has their space, and, with Guthrie here, we've been looking at how do we allocate the staff. Is it something we could conceivably do without much salary change or the need for staff? And so we'll continue to explore that and figure that out. So I think they would be popular days
That sounds like that would answer the question. That would be very helpful for them. And, I can see, I think the point probably needs to be made that enough responsible staff need to be on hand to keep the building open. There needs to be somebody with the authority to open it. There needs to be somebody with the authority to lock it up. That person needs to probably be there all those hours. So it isn't just, we just need more clerks. There's more to it than that.
There's more
and
to
so,
it than that.
Yeah.
And once you go beyond a regular shift, then you do get into needing multiples of that classification. So.
Yeah.
But June, I don't think we want Monique to just answer the question of College Terrace being open or whatever, because I think the question becomes, as soon as you do that, I think the question for me right now is, would College Terrace being open one more day, 8 hours, let's call it, be more important than Mitchell Park being open an hour earlier? And so it's not, I think there's trade-offs to be made that I think came into the equation. What if we open, and because you've got the letter in here that's quite enthusiastic about people showing up at 9 o'clock at Mitchell Park and it not being open. So I think
True.
there's
You can
trade-offs.
address the full breadth and width of the possibilities.
I don't think you want her to say yes and no to College Terrace without actually having the opportunity to investigate, think about everything else, or at least whether she needs a survey or just give us the answer.
Right.
I think the whole thing needs to be considered holistically.
Right. And so in this first memo, we won't have all the answers. Right. So I mean, I think comparatively, our hours are pretty strong. There's very few libraries that I know that are open full days on Sundays. So.
And much better than they were when I was raising my children here.
Yeah.
So.
And yes, back in the 60s, they were open like 9 to 9, but was a very different time and a very different model of operation, so. And not 1,500 people a day like we have at Mitchell Park. So. Okay, I understand your recommendations to me, and we'll follow through on that.
Great, thank you very much. We'll,
Sure.
like we said, look forward to the memo. And
too.
now we're gonna look forward to listening to the library director's report, which is the next item on our agenda.
Which I will do in a timely fashion. I have included for you just a basic, my basic memo with just explaining what's attached and what's going on. But I do want to remind the viewing public that this coming Saturday at 4 p.m., we will have the unveiling of the Library Arts Center sign at the corner of Embarcadero and Newell, and everyone is invited. And it should not last more than half an hour, and you'll get to see the beautiful sign right away. So please feel free to join us there. So the other two things, one is a 3D printer report and progress update from Alex, who talked about how we've implemented those in the different branches and where we have. And you may have seen that there was a letter from the community saying that these are potentially hazardous items. I did want to point out that the plastics we use are compostable. So her concern about adding to the waste stream is not as dire as you might have thought. The biggest challenge seems to be with the 3D printer, the extruder plugging up, and it gets stuck, and then nothing else can happen. And nothing else can happen for a while till you can get that plastic out or melted, or, it's a little more time consuming than I think anybody had imagined. So that piece of it is a little bit of a challenge. And then just sort of, because I know this is something you enjoy, the Urban Libraries Council Directors Listserv, one of the directors asked two very simple questions. What is your population, and what is your materials budget? And so these are just the directors who chose to respond, and that should have been attached. So the list, it should have been right behind my report, which was item number.
No, I do.
Oh, it came after 4. There it is. So then, the director, yes. So the director who put this together then calculated the material dollars per capita. And you can see that Palo Alto ranked 5th out of those who chose to respond. And so, yay. And I have to say that the budgeted number that I included, $870,000, is the general fund budget. It does not include the donations and things that we get from the Friends. So our per capita spending is higher, but because that changes on an annual basis and is a donation kind of thing, I just wanted to include what was part of our baseline budget. And
Do you think others did that as well, or?
yes.
So you think it's apples to apples?
I think it is pretty much,
Okay.
yeah. The hard part is, are they, I think it's as apples to apples as you're going to get, because, everyone calculates their budget a little differently.
Right.
And does this all include the technology, the databases, as well as books and CDs and DVDs and things like that? I believe it does, but that's.
I do want to point out a serious error on this.
Okay.
It's Edmonton, Alberta, not Edmonton, Ontario.
Oh, okay, well, I didn't do that, so.
As an Albertan.
How's it now? Yeah, okay, I'll have to mention that to her, although I'm sure the folks in Canada have already gotten to her. So anyhow, I thought that was an interesting bit of information and showed that we do invest a fair amount into our collections based on our population. So,
I think it's huge.
and then, of course, the other items that are attached as usual are public letters to the library director and the city council, places where the library has appeared in the media. This was all in the back. And also at places, then you have the new hot off the shelf, the two monthly reports for August and September, and my goal is in December that you will have these as part of the packet so you can look at them. Again, this is still new, so we didn't have the virtual experiences printouts. We'll have those next time. And then announcing that the seed library has started at Rinconada. So you have the brochure. It just opened, soft opening this week. We had one guy who came and was very happy, and he said the reason he was happy to have the seed library is that he didn't have to take a whole packet of seeds. You just take a few. So nobody's going to plant a whole packet of cucumbers, because my family did that, and we had cucumbers like falling out of the refrigerator. So just take a few seeds. You don't need them all. So anyways, we're happy to have that off and going, and our partners are the Palo Alto Community Gardens and Silicon Valley Grows, One Seed, One Community project.
You'll be happy to know I retweeted your tweet on that today.
Oh, awesome. I am happy to know we were retweeted.
You were.
So,
Monique, can I ask a couple of questions? Do we know, or do you know off the top of your head, it doesn't really matter, but which model of the Alto maker we have?
I don't know which model.
Okay, because I had not seen the name before, so I looked up Ultimaker, and basically every review of 3D printers gives Ultimaker the top
Yes.
results. What I didn't know, of course, was that it was Dutch, which I thought was pretty interesting.
It's control systems,
The other question I have is, can we ask what the status of the bike repair? I know the concrete pads are there, sitting there expectantly.
They are, and I was notified by Public Works today that it'll be 4 more weeks. They were having problems with the procurement of the drive-up book drops, because those are being installed at the same time. So it's the same contractor who's doing both projects, and needing to wait, not wanting to disrupt traffic and all of the parking.
Thank you.
And I will say that we also have MakerBots. We don't have them out right now. We're using those in the back room. And really, we found that the MakerBots require more venting than the Ultimakers do. So.
You didn't know you had to hire engineers as well as librarians.
Well, we just had that conversation today, interestingly enough, about how the two jobs are going to intersect at some point, but we can have that theoretical discussion another time, so.
I'll buy you coffee.
Okay. Any other questions?
I guess,
I did want to
Yeah.
explain one thing, because we kind of had a question last time. So you see the circulation statistics on the front of the monthly report. Just to be clear about what we're showing is that where it says checkouts, those are the first time checkouts. So
so it doesn't include renewals, is that what you mean?
that's correct, in checkouts. And then of those checkouts, what percentage were done on the self-check machine?
That's the percentage.
That's the percentage, 85, 89. And then total circ, the third column, includes the renewals in that number. So I just wanted to be sure we were clear about those numbers.
And does this include electronic items?
Yes. Yeah, this is the total circulation. Yeah. Should. But I will double check since this is a work in progress. Does this should include the electronic items?
You know what, I will have to check that.
We'll have to double check.
Yeah, we'll have to. double
Thank
check.
you.
Thank you. Can I mention a couple of other things that are independent of that?
Uh-huh.
The last meeting, we talked about the Harwood Community Engagement Model
Correct.
as a basis for helping us build our, excuse me, strategic plan. But tonight, they talked about the collective approach to building. Just a comment, it would be nice if the city could somehow provide the tool and the training so that everybody could build a strategic plan that were consistent and compatible. In the letters to the letters to the editor, let's say, the fact that the drinking fountains don't have water bottle stations, I thought was maybe trivia, but also worth worrying about, or not worth worrying about, but worth addressing some point if we could.
Yeah, that had already been requested a while ago, so we're just in the list.
It's on the list.
Yeah.
So that brings up another item then. Relative to all sorts of these items that come in, I'm surprised that we don't have some sort of ticketing system so that we could actually identify, I don't know if
We
we
do.
use. We do?
The city does, yeah, you know, if
We
you,
use the 311 system, right?
correct, and so that feeds into a ticketing system.
Right, so do we feed into that? And so could I go to the 311 system and sort by library and see all of
You
those
should be
entries?
you should be able to.
I'll give it a try.
Give it a try. We actually don't go into 311, we could. We do a regular facilities request, and then it's, my understanding is that it's supposed to be put into the system separately, but I don't know that it does. We
Good.
we could go into 311 and put it in, but
Well, I guess I'm asking, does it go in automatically, or would we have to enter it into the 311 system?
someone not from the library, I believe, enters it in.
Okay, because I'd be as interested in a 311 report at a library commission meeting that said, here's all the things that have been entered into 311 for the library, and here's the status of them, or whatever. And I would think it would help you, too. So I'll go try it and see what happens, and maybe come back and talk to you separately. Thanks.
So I had one question on after reading the packet. Our physical collection size is down, but the ebook size is way, way up. Is there a known reason that the physical collection size is down? It was by design because of the the renovations of the libraries. Is that still the same effect, or is it something else, do you think?
We continue to weed heavily because we
Okay.
have either multiple copies, things that are already falling apart, things that already need to be, withdrawn. So we are looking now at, lists that have books that have not circulated in 3 years. And, so if they've never circulated in the time that the libraries have been reopened or before that, it's unlikely, especially with things like fiction. So we're going through and we're, adding things back in those same areas, so, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, and I did also want to say it looks like you got good attention to the Bike Pals program, so that's really good. Nice to see.
They
Right.
served about, I think they said 2,500 people in the first month, so
Yeah,
really
great.
popular.
It's cool.
On the books for circulation, I know you've been weeding out the ones that haven't been circulating. Do you look at the, for example, New York Times list of bestsellers? And I know you've done this in the past. Then you get those books on the shelf, and presumably those are the ones that people are looking for.
Yes, yes. The person who does most of the selection takes the list from the New York Times and from other publications, as well as there's a list of books that are featured, like on NPR and, on TV shows during the week, and make sure that we have copies of all of those items. So anything that comes from the media or has been reviewed somewhere else, those are automatically purchased. And when there are 5 holds on an item, then we automatically purchase additional copies for every 5 people waiting, so that we continue to have enough copies to satisfy the holds in a timely manner. And the same thing is true of the ebooks, which is why a lot of those were up. If there are 5 holds for Palo Alto, we purchase another copy. And so we try to meet the demand for those popular items, because our circulation period is longer than any other libraries. We have 4-week circulation. Most have 2 or 3 weeks, and which also affects the comparison of the circulation rates. So, if we wanted to have higher circulation, we could just shorten that time frame, and we'd have higher circulation. So, yes, and those things that are on the New York Times, we also buy for the Lucky Day collection, because those are, again, you're right, people will be looking for those.
On the ebooks, we had an interesting experience this afternoon. My wife wanted to download one using her Kindle, and it failed the first 4 times, and we weren't sure whether it was the library or the Kindle, but we finally got the book downloaded. And I'm just wondering if you had any complaints about people not being able to easily access ebooks, or
All the time.
all the time.
Yes, it's actually, the vendors, sometimes you have to go to Adobe and get an account and log back in, or you have to get something else. However, we do have people who you can make an appointment with, and we will work with you to help you download everything. So whether it's music or a book, the technology tutors are teenagers who are part of our volunteer corps. Let's see how this all comes together. And
Everything is connected.
everything's connected, and that's an area that we're really hoping to expand, because we know that it can be frustrating and complicated, and we do the best that we can to make it simple. But until the vendors can make it just push a button and it works, we're going to be stuck with people who, I'm glad you guys stuck with it and it worked. So, thank you.
Yeah, it's difficult, but those teenagers, they're going to be the future directors of support for all the companies around here, right? So give them work.
Librarians.
And future librarians, right. Any more comments on the director's report? We don't have council liaison here, so we can go on to other reports and questions from commissioners.
Just kind of generically, when do you expect to have the draft budget ready? Because I think the commission would like to look at it when it's ready to go to the council, so that we can talk to our council buddies and get them ready.
That process doesn't really begin until after the first of the year, and it'll likely, I'm sure that the finance committee usually has meetings about it in May, so our draft budget will likely be ready in April, though sometimes it goes right up until the very first meetings, which is not under our control, because we give them the numbers. Evelyn is our budget coordinator. She makes sure that I've done everything I'm supposed to do on time. And so if you have, I would suggest that if you're interested in what our budget will look like next year, you should look at this year's budget, because we've already been prepared that there will likely be reductions and very few, if any, additions. So,
I thought we were going to ask for the extra $1 million.
my request goes to the city manager. So you have, then it goes to council. And, the city manager has a role in this as well. So even if I asked for $1 million, he might not approve that as well. So, or they would put it in there as a request, knowing that it was not going to be able to be funded without cuts in other places.
Who knows, you might have a library-friendly council member.
I could, it's possible. However, I would like to think that all of the council members are library friendly. So,
I thought they were.
I think they are.
I think last month, but they were all friendly.
I think compared to some places where I've worked in the past, they are all very appreciative and supportive. So that's, we have that as a benefit.
Other comments? In our packet was the meeting calendar date for next month, and I'm sure you guys are going to put them on your calendar. I checked mine. We can plan to come. Thank you, Evelyn. And thank you for writing the minutes that you did earlier. I should have said that. So, agenda for next meeting, we are going to have a presentation, I think, or at least information about what the library is doing just for marketing in general. And promoting.
And promotions was
Yeah.
one thing that you wanted to hear about for December.
Right. And part of I might as well say this too. So there's all kinds of great stuff on the website, and there's things in Facebook, and but unless a person goes looking for that, they don't necessarily find it. So my question is more about what else. It's partly what we're doing, but also, and what are we not doing that we didn't think about, which I don't know how we figure that one out, but that's the, flyers on the street. Are we putting up posters? Are we using Nextdoor, that kind of thing? So,
Okay.
and I think we're done, and somebody could move to
I
adjourn.
move the meeting be adjourned.
All in favor? Aye. Aye. All right. Don, you didn't vote. All right.
So,
Thank you.
just to